Welcome to the Norman Lowell Gallery. It is a privilege of mine and an honor to be able to work with this collection and to present it to every visitor who finds themselves on a top of a hill in the middle of nowhere, as we like to say. In art, you look for the message of the artist, in addition to observing the technical quality of his work. In Norman Lowell's art, you find a deep love of the life and the scenery here in Alaska, as well as a love for the creator who made it all. He conveys this love for Alaska in several specific idealizations. If you watched our virtual tour, we covered in that several of the themes that drive the story that is found here. And now I would like to take a few minutes to look at some of his techniques, different styles, and variety of mediums that Norman Lowell employed to bring his collection to life on the canvas. Due to the circumstances that we find ourselves in the world, I realize that far fewer people will be able to come and visit this gallery in person than on a normal year. And because of that, we decided to create an online-only special where you can go and look through a selection of the prints that we offer at a special discount. You can find this collection at normanlowellgallery.org/2020. Many of the paintings in our permanent collection have been reproduced in canvas giclée prints, and each one of the paintings that I'm going to spotlight in the coming minutes is offered in these prints this year for 40% off. And if you can make it here this year, we invite you to come and spend time in the gallery in person, immersing yourself in this whole experience that I cannot even begin to convey in these videos. But in the meantime, here's a short look at the styles, techniques, and mediums employed by Norman Lowell in his collection. If you live in a northern latitude, such as Alaska finds itself in, you may be familiar with the term termination dust. It's that first coating of snow that covers the mountains and signals the termination of summer. In his work, First Snow, Norman Lowell depicts in pastel that moment where the first snows have come down the mountain and have reached the valleys, as the very tips of the branches and the tops of the grasses are covered in those white points. The soft, dreamy technique that he employs in the pastel draws attention to those white points, and it also gives you the feeling of that passing fall storm. The soft, dreamy pastel technique is changed slightly here in For the Winter. The emphasis is on the glowing lights in the night. Norman Lowell depicted the aurora borealis in every medium that he worked in, ranging from the soft depiction in pastel to a very abstract rendition with oil knives. But here, in For the Winter, we cannot miss the glow of the light coming out of the window and reflecting off of the snow. This entire scene with this small, primitive cabin and the northern lights dancing overhead and the blanket of snow, this is the dream life in the Northland. An old copper mine, no longer producing. Kennecott Mine, rendered by Norman Lowell in watercolor. Norman's signature technique was one such that if you observe the painting closely, you see chaotic knife strokes that don't seem to make sense. But as you back away, the image comes together, and it's stunning in the clarity that you see. And yet, there were times when Norman Lowell wanted to render a scene in very fine detail. And when he did decide to do this, he often chose the medium of watercolors. In midwinter, in Anchor Point, the sun does not come very high above the horizon. Not much higher, in fact, than depicted here in Passing of the Sun, which Norman Lowell rendered in watercolor. A scene of a deep freeze in the middle of the winter, when the snow has come in so heavily through the night that it's laden on the trees and bending them over. This sun peeking through at this moment brings a scene of incomparable beauty. And the soft glow brought out in the watercolors really brings life to a scene that describes, for many of us, one of the reasons why we live here through the winter. One of the largest acrylic paintings that Norman ever rendered is of the Anchor River, just below his homestead. It's on one of those fall days, just a brief period of time of about a week or so, when the yellow colors come out and the crystal clear waters of the river reflect the blue sky. Norman developed a technique which he employs in this painting, where he would mix acrylic paint with several other mediums that allowed him to build up the paint strokes in this interesting textured style. He never really shared all that went into this technique that he developed. And yet, in this, one of his grandest paintings representing this style, he chose to depict a small river, a river that to him represented home. Coming Home, rendered in acrylic, is a tribute to the Bristol Bay sailboat fishermen. One finds tributes to this fishery scattered throughout the gallery. It was one of the most meaningful parts of the culture of the past in Alaska to Norman. For a period, he really enjoyed using the fiberglass board for his paintings in the way that it would bring out textures that were unanticipated. In this painting, one can see almost that stained glass texture, best in the sail and also in the fog in the background, where the mountains rolling away are lost to view. That overcast, cloudy feeling really draws out the harshness, the ruggedness that Norman Lowell associated with this fishery. One of the best examples of Norman's early knife work in oils, his painting Alaska, was rendered in 1966. Its setting is in the Mat-Su Valley in the Alaska Range, when Norman did not have painting knives large enough to make some of the strokes that he wanted to make. He would use cement trowels, or even Libby's kitchen spatulas. And what is seen best in this picture is his technique, how he would layer color upon color on a knife. And then in one stroke, he would swipe it onto the canvas. And with broad stroke after broad stroke, using that pre-layering method, he would render such a scene of light. Norman would use painting knives for much more detailed paintings as well, such as Paradise Valley. In this work, where he used very fine painting knives to render each color carefully, at first, the stunning mountain vistas and the fields of fireweed draw the viewer in. But as you look at this scene closely, you see a small log cabin down in the valley. It is that log cabin that features so prominently throughout Norman Lowell's collection. And as you take in this scene, you realize that the artist has here found perhaps about as close to perfection as he expects to find in this world. Here in Vestige in Time, Norman Lowell again uses that technique of layering colors on the knife and making one stroke. And yet in this painting, it's on a very small scale. And despite the small size of the painting, there is a vastness that is spellbinding. It takes a simple, weathered object and conveys a parable on life through it. There are hyper-realistic works in Norman's collection, and there are also wildly abstract works. And then there are beautiful paintings such as this one that fall somewhere in between. Norman rendered his very largest works in oils with brushes. To be honest, his work, Journey into the Deep Forest, has made some people uneasy. So deep is the darkness of the foreboding forest. Norman Lowell had a specific pattern that he would go through when preparing to render a large oil such as this. He would start with sketches, and after he had sketched out in the field, a sketch such as of his children walking into the forest, he would come back to his studio and he would render a study in pastel or sometimes a small oil. But a composition like this, with the feeling of depth and darkness and the small light children walking into it in such a carefree fashion, it can only be done justice on such a massive scale as this. And while some people feel it and express uneasiness, other people look at it and say, "Where is this setting? Because I have to see what's at the end of that trail." The 7-foot by 14-foot Spirit of the North is the only painting in the gallery that was done here in the gallery. Norman had to mount the canvas on the wall, and he painted it by using scaffolding. He framed it with wood from his father's barn, and the frame was constructed by his son and his grandson, thus making this centerpiece of the gallery a true multi-generational endeavor. There is nothing else like it. To stand under the aurora borealis when the lights are dancing at their strongest, when the snow mutes all sounds, so you're in the perfect stillness of the night, and the lights wave overhead in curtains that make the snow glow. The colors, greens, blues, sometimes reds, purples. The spirit of the North. The finest work of Norman Lowell. Thank you for watching. For more information, check out our website at normanlowellgallery.org or follow us on Facebook at Norman Lowell Gallery. If you're interested in supporting the work of the foundation and the operation here, consider looking at our donation page on mightycause.com and check out our summer special for the year at normanlowellgallery.org/2020. Many visitors have told us after coming through the gallery here that this is one of the destinations that they will recommend most highly from their visit in Alaska. It is truly an experience worth having. We hope that every one of you watching will be able to come one day and visit with us in person.